The Federal Reserve made its long awaited decision on interest rates this week. The Fed decided to lower the federal funds rate by a quarter point. That was widely expected. But many people sitting on the sidelines when it comes to buying or refinancing a home took note of mortgage rates. The 30-year fixed mortgage rate dropped to 6.26%. That's the fourth consecutive weekly drop. It's also the lowest rate in nearly a year. And still yet, there are growing concerns about tariffs and other Trump policies and their impact on prices of everyday essentials. Let's discuss this all with nationally syndicated personal finance columnist Terry Savage. She's also the author of The Savage Truth on Money. Good morning, Terry. Thank you so much for being here with us. I have so many questions for you, but let's start here.
Okay.
The
All right.
Fed did the thing everyone's been waiting for and talking about for months now. Interest rates were lowered. What does this mean for the regular consumer?
Well, it depends on which side of the aisle you're on. Are you a borrower or a lender? The Fed, we hear so much about the power of the Fed, but basically they set short-term interest rates. Short-term interest rates like overnight rates that banks lend to each other. They actually have less influence on longer-term rates. You know, the United States has borrowed trillions, like about $38 trillion. That's our national debt. And we finance it by selling short-term IOUs and longer terms, treasury notes and bonds. And the rates on those are set in the bond market. And rates on short-term notes, interest rates will drop. Savers are going to see their CD rate yields drop when they come to renew. Treasury bills are a little bit lower, under 4% now. But funny thing happened on the way. A year ago, when the Fed cut rates, short-term rates by a full percentage point, mortgage rates went up by 1%. And just this week, although short-term rates have dropped a bit, longer-term rates inched up in the last 2 days.
I know this is taking a little bit long, but I want her to get her finish her point, and then I'll give some commentary in just a moment. Thank you guys for stopping by again, and please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All right, let's let her cook a little bit.
That's what sets mortgage rates. So mortgage rates dropped in anticipation. We're down about 6.25% on a 30-year mortgage. They may not drop much further if the rest of the world says, wait, there could be inflation in the United States. We don't want to lend at low rates. We're worried about that.
All right, well, Terry, listen, I'm one of those millennials who has been salivating for a while, trying to buy a home, but, I feel like I and many others have been told, wait, mortgage rates are high, etc. What's your take right now? Is it more feasible?
Okay, before they get into that question, a couple things here. Everything she said so far, I generally agree with. I mean, here's the reality, guys. We're very fickle, and by we, I mean the people. And so what happens is when we in an environment like this where you have unemployment kind of going in the wrong direction, which, yes and no, it's still historically low, even the fact that we've had lots of layoffs. Um, you still have 95% workforce, so that's still pretty good, even more than that, actually. But anyway, when we ask the government to intervene, it's more inflation, meaning like when they turn on those printers, they're inflating the money away. And then we say, hey, come save us. And then they come and say that's their tool that they use to save us. And then we suffer more because it makes it harder when it really is going to boil down to a collective pullback, meaning like everyone's going to have to dial back in their lifestyle and everything to really fix the problem. And I just don't see that happening. And without going into all those details about why I feel that way, you should go check out The Uneducated Economist. He does a very brilliant job of breaking down economic policy and how to think about the economy and stuff like that. It's very, very brilliant. The essay I often quote him on, and the essay that he talks about a lot, is the Cantillon effect. You should definitely go read that. And the critical threat theory. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But essentially, the government only has one tool to get us out of this, and that's to lower interest rates, but when you do that, it they have to inflate it away, and new money pours into the system, and that new money is foreign. A lot of foreign money comes in, and they're buying up US dollars. See how the world, like, the world currency is the dollar. So all of these bonds that are issued in the around the world is backed by dollars. Essentially, if we give someone something, if people are trading around the world and they're saying like, "Hey, this bond is good for US dollar. I'll pay you 100 US. This is worth 100 US dollars." And if we don't have enough dollars to print, it's just inflation, right? You're inflating the money away, so you print more and more and more and more and more, and they just spend, 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 live way beyond their means. So, say all that to say that this is going to take lots of time and strategic to actually pay down debt. $36 trillion is a lot of money. I believe that's what they said. So I just, not to be like negative here, but when they talk about bringing jobs back and manufacturing jobs, I don't see that happening. Just from the simple fact that you can't compete with someone who's willing to sleep on the dirt floor. It's just not going to happen, right? We require more wages. And that in itself is inflationary. So you're in this doom loop, if you will. And until we are willing to pull back in lifestyle and move away from luxuries and all decide collectively as a society we are going to be um manufacturers and savers, we're not going to be spenders, earners and spenders, that I I don't see this being fixed at all. I genuinely don't, because people tend to think they want the government to come save them, and when the government comes save them, they say, "Okay, let's turn on the money printers and let's, give out this or that," and it's inflationary because this is the way the system's set up. That's why now you have two people in the household working, each of them working a regular job, and then each of them also have a side hustle and so forth. That's what you're having to do now in order to make it. Whereas before, back even in the early 2000s, I was able to get my first apartment working one job, and it wasn't even a decent paying job. I think I'm making like, I don't know, 12, 11, 12 bucks an hour. And, it was tight, but the fact that I was able to do it, now I had low overhead for sure, but you couldn't do that now. And so I'm rambling here, but anyway, we can't compete with someone who's willing to sleep on a dirt floor. Just not going to happen. But let's see what else she has to say about the housing. Please don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, comment, and share. I appreciate you guys.
At the least, or even the right move today to try and buy a home?
Oh, sure, it absolutely is. If you're secure in your job, and that's the other thing weighing on the mortgage market. There's a lack of supply, and all those people that got their mortgages at 3% a few years back don't want to sell, because if they move, they'll have to pay over 6 for a new mortgage. That gap is narrowing now. But this historically, 6.25% is not high. There was a time when mortgage rates were 13 and 14% back in the early 80s, and people still bought homes and waited for rates to drop and refinance. So if you're comfortable and secure in your job, which is something many people aren't these days, then you should go out and grab the 6.25. Worst comes to worst, rates drop, you just refinance.
Okay. I'm not shocked here. She may have some good stuff. She may not. I don't know. But, jeez. Is now a good time to buy a house? I will just say it's all depending on your goals. If you, and to a large degree, okay, yeah, if you feel like your job is in limbo, don't go out and sign up for a mortgage. That should be rule number one. Two, when she uses a reference point that back in the day, mortgages used to be 14% or whatever. Of course, but that was relative. Again, you can get a regular job working at a hardware store, you know, and afford a mortgage. It was relative, right? And buying a standard 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1950 style home, through most of the country, you could do that. Even some in expensive areas. You cannot do that now. And that's where I don't know, how is how did some of these people this is why people get mad at boomers, to be honest. This is why people get mad at boomers right here. They think, "Oh, well, we used to do it, so you can do it." No, you can't. Our economic policy and monetary policy is totally different. Yeah, 14%. I believe most people, millennials, even some Gen Z, would buy a home if they could work at Home Depot and afford a mortgage. They would do it. I don't think that's the problem. The demand is there. It's just affordability is not there. And she's like, "Well, if you could," I want to leave her alone now. My point is, it's never been more challenging than before. That's not to make light of prior generations. I think prior generations were definitely able and willing to live a little bit less, like they didn't have all the streaming platforms and stuff like that. But who's to say if they didn't if they had those things, they wouldn't have done it. So eh, again, they didn't have to deal with the level of inflation that we've had to deal with. I mean, there were some periods where it was pretty bad. I have this conversation with my father all the time. However, you could still live on one income. You'd be hard pressed to find where you could do that nowadays. And so I think that's the biggest difference. It was the relative, right? Your dollars went a lot further. You weren't making as much, but you were still able to make it work. Whereas now, I don't think you make work. I think I beat this up long enough. You guys, let me know what you think in the comments about this. And please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, let me know what you think. See you in the next one.